Hello, welcome back to Come Reads as we continue with A Free Woman on God's Earth. Chapter 4. By 1773, the colonies had become a place of rebellion. All over in the towns and in the countryside, people were talking heatedly about the high taxes they were forced to pay on tea and paper and other necessities. They were angry they had to work for a king who lived so far away across the sea. They gathered along the roads in taverns and in homes. Colonel Ashley upstairs study became an important meeting place for a committee of men working on a letter called a Declaration of Grievances to King George of England in hope it would help America free itself from British rule. 11 men, including Samuel Adams and Ethan Allen, met together for 3 days to draft this document. Colonel Ashley was the chairman of the committee, and it was up to Mumbet to serve the gentlemen tea, wait on them, and clean up after them. She could not help but overhear their discussions. Massachusetts has always been a leader in matters such as this, said Samuel Adams. We need to be leaders again. We long to be an independent country, able to make our own laws. Why should our tax money pay for the British Army to stay here as if we were children who couldn't take care of ourselves? Everyone should have the right to be free, agreed Ethan Allen. Freedom will come with a price, Ethan, and that price may be a revolution, said Colonel Ashley. Are we ready for war? I'd give up my life to get rid of these troops, harumphed Mr. Allen. They do us no service. I wouldn't be so hot-headed, Ethan, as to suggest violence. Let's make the law work for us, replied Colonel Ashley. I would also prefer to stay on the side of the law, sir, added Aaron Root. We have all been born equal and free, but the English Parliament obviously consider us unequal under law. This is unacceptable. The committee's clerk was a young man named Theodore Sedgwick, a lawyer from Sheffield, who was often at the Ashley household speaking with the colonel. He was well known to Mumbet and always treated her politely. He would always come to a very important person in her life. As the gentleman of the committee spoke, Mr. Sedgwick listened carefully and held his quill ready. After 2 days, he wrote on the first sentence what became known as the Sheffield Declaration. Resolved that mankind in a state of nature are equal, free, and independent of each other, and have the right to undistributed enjoyment of their lives, liberty, and property. Mumbet, standing in the doorway, heard this talk of freedom and equality, listening to the men heat disgustedly their rights to independence, and she asked herself, why is it that I, who am not a beast, but am of my own kind, why is it that I cannot be free? She thought these words long after the men had returned to their home. As time went on, many of these colonists began preparing to fight. Oftentimes, on the village green, there were speeches and discussions about equality, independence, and freedom. Mumbet heard many of these speeches. She heard those stirring words over and over again. All men are created free and equal. They excited her. She wondered what she could do to be part of their meeting. If the country was fighting for freedom, wouldn't that mean have freedom for everyone, including slaves? Then 3 years later, in 1776, America declared war on Britain. The war for independence had begun. The town of Sheffield was in turmoil. Many husbands and brothers and fathers were going off to war. Each household prepared for its menfolk to join the army. Young and old, the men took up arms and prepared to fight for independence. Soon, the town felt deserted with so many of the men gone off to war. The women had to do twice the work now. They banded together to support each other in doing the work the men had left behind, sometimes lending their servants, slaves, and even their young sons to help with harvest and heaviest chores. Each season seemed to be harder than the last. A year later, a call came from new recruits. George Washington needed more soldiers to help fight the British. They began asking enslaved men to join up and fight alongside their soldiers. For this, the black soldiers were promised freedom at the end of the war in exchange for service. Mumbet's husband decided to join a local regiment. I'm joining up, Bet. When I get back, I'll be a free man, and I can work extra hard and buy you and little Bet your precious freedom. Mumbet threw her arms around her husband, her heart full of his words. She knew it would be hard to have him gone. But wasn't the possibility of their own freedom worth the risk? She and Little Bet tearfully bade him farewell, and with hope in his heart he set off for war. Late that summer, 7 months after her husband had joined the army, Mom Bet was kneeling in the garden digging the last of the potatoes. The sun was emerging from behind the clouds when she saw a neighbor, Azariah Root, striding purposely out the path towards the Ashley kitchen door. He looked towards as he passed and he caught her eye. Something in his manner drew her attention. Gathering the basket of potatoes in her arms, she hurried towards the house only to hear Squire Root already speaking to her master. "John, I have some disturbing news." Colonel Ashley looked at his friend. "What is it, neighbor? Pray tell me." "I have a letter from Colonel Patterson's unit," Squire Root continued. "A number of our men have been reported killed at the battle at Saratoga. Among them is Bet's husband. I think it should be best you to tell her." With an agonizing wail, Mom Bet dropped the basket of potatoes. She held her hands to her ears and tried to block out those words. They echoed in her head with finality. Without thinking, she turned and ran towards her wood. She ran as fast as she could, the brush catching at her skirt. She ran up until she ran no more. The afternoon sun disappeared behind a dark cloud where she could finally stumble to the ground. Grief and shock consumed her and she wept uncontrollably. "Oh, my love, why?" she moaned, wiping her eyes, smearing dirt on her tear-streaked face. What was to become of her, of Little Bet? She thought of the smile she would never see again, his soft touch to her cheek. She thought of her daughter's joyous face, picked her up and put on her high. She let out a wail of despair. The weight of her grief pulled her deeper towards the earth. She lay for a long time with her face in the grass. For what may have been hours, she felt like the warm sun on her back. She turned towards it as it emerged from behind the clouds. The heat helped her soothe her sob. Mom Bet stayed until the sun had sunk below the horizon, not concerned that the mistress might be wondering where she was. A chill had begun to rise up from the earth as she dragged herself to her feet. Standing still for a moment, she gazed around her. Everything looked the same, the trees, the fields, the path back to the house. But she knew her life had changed. She was now a widow. Her daughter had lost her father. Nothing would be the same. Reluctantly, she turned back towards the house, looking for Little Bet. The evening star flickered in the sky. With swelling sorrow, Mom Bet sighed and said aloud, "It must be God's will." Throughout the fall and winter, she and Little Bet did their work with little thought of anything but their grief. For a short while, Mrs. Ashley was lenient and didn't push them to work harder. Mom Bet somberly realized that in losing her husband, she had most certainly lost her chance to be free. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.